the MIT L.E.A.D series, and today's presentation is about being an inclusive leader. And my name is Abigail Francis. I'm the director of LBGT Services at MIT. And this is my colleague.
I'm La-Tarri Canty. I'm the director of Multicultural Programs.
And we're going to start off with sharing what the evening will look like. We know some of you have some time commitments, so we're going to try to honor that. And the PowerPoint's a little difficult to read, so we'll go through it. You'll get there.
I'm actually not going to use the PowerPoint.
Okay.
We're just going to go off our notes.
Off the cuff.
Yeah.
Already testing our leadership skills. So I was going to start with some ground rules for our conversation for tonight. Sometimes when we talk about inclusion and diversity and multicultural issues, it can get a little challenging. And so some ground rules would be really helpful. And so typical MIT, it's an acronym. Hi, welcome, come on in. This is inclusive leadership. There's no sign in, nope, you're all set. So we just started and we're gonna talk about some ground rules for the evening, and the acronym is ROPES. So if you had to come up with a ground rule that began with an R, what would it be? Respect, and what does that mean exactly, do you think? Awesome, so respecting different opinions, great. Maybe using respectful language, thinking about how you say things. O, what might O stand for? Great, or yeah, and in general, being open, perfect. Having an open mind. Do you want to say more about that at all? What that means to you? Being open-minded.
Listening before you assume something.
That's great, I love it. Not making assumptions, perfect. This might sound a little juvenile, but I find it's really helpful in these conversations to think about, oops, I said something I shouldn't have, or ouch, I heard something I shouldn't have. And you don't have to explain it, you can just say those words if it comes up. We're not going to get that heated tonight, hopefully, but in case you need it, it's there. P, what might P stand for? I'm asking this of you right now. Participation. Good one. And also with that, the right to pass. So sometimes folks don't feel like sharing, and that's okay too. Participation, pass. E. Did you have one? No. Oh, bless you. Respectful. We're all at MIT because certainly a lot of people would say that. But aside from excellence, we also strive to be and to, it's a place of education. Yay. We are striving for excellence too. But just to take the pressure off a little bit, we're here to learn as well. And S? Sympathy is a good one. Kind of goes with what I was thinking around safety, sensitivity, and one that I really like is called step up, step back, which is the idea, and usually this pertains to a little bit of a bigger of a group, but it might pertain tonight as well. But the idea is that if you're saying a lot, you take a step back and you listen for a sec, maybe 30 seconds, just say, I wonder if anyone else will speak to this before I do. And if you're not saying a lot, that you be willing to step outside your comfort zone and take a step forward and offer your opinion, your thoughts. So it's a relatively small group tonight, and we're all kind of facing this way, so we might shift it up a little bit, turn to face your partners during some of the small group activities that we have planned. But anyone have anything to add or subtract from this list here? Anything missing? Feeling like you could show each other the ropes if we get astray? Okay, good. Those are our ground rules.
Awesome. Thank you, Abigail. I'm actually going to deviate from what we have because I would like to know who's in the room and why you're in the room. So we're going to start with the young lady right here who is looking down, so I won't pick her. I didn't know you were chewing. We can start in the back. It's not a problem.
Yeah, I actually think I was actually going to walk on a bit because I think that might have been
wrong place.
Okay, that's fine. So we can start here.
I'm Kat. What should you say about it?
Why you're here tonight?
Okay. So I am part of the Science Policy Initiative, which is a new group that's like starting to build up. And one thing that I felt when I joined was that new member engagement, when you're a new member in an organization like that, it can feel a little kooky.
Mm.
And so as I am starting to take leadership positions, my focus has been on making sure that other people don't have that same experience.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm Nikki. I'm here because, well, I'm a freshman at number 6, which is a fraternity down that way. And I'm basically here to learn a little bit, I guess, about leadership and hopes that one day I get to step up into that role.
Thank you.
So I'm Iyas. I'm also from number 6. It's a co-ed fraternity / fraternity. And yeah, we read about this stuff. It was interesting. And I met a couple of people come to see.
Nice recruiting.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nargis. I'm here because I can see myself in a leader position in the future, and I feel that it's when everyone feels really inclusive in the group and they all perform well, and you get the best results. So
Thank
maybe
you.
it really hits.
I'm Ashley. I drag by her, but she said inclusive. I was like, oh, I am not an inclusive person. This could be good for me.
That's good to know. Okay. Thank you. All right, so
we
we're going to...
had one addition as well.
Yes.
If you could just tell us. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
No, I'm actually interested because probably in the future I might have some leadership positions. So the more I know, the better for everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to ask you all to do a small group activity.
Do you want one group or two? Maybe two groups?
Right.
Okay.
You all can be. So this is a communications exercise. As you see, it's about you all being placed on the moon, and you have to survive. And you have 15 items that you have, and you have to rank them in order of importance. You can talk it out, work it out amongst yourselves. We're going to give you 10 minutes to give us your rankings. Don't have them sign up so far in advance.
When did they sign up over IB?
I think so. It was on
January is a very optimistic month for these folks. I'm not kidding. I'm serious.
Did you bring your copy
Did I bring a copy?
of this? No.
Should we start from the top and make the one we don't think are very important?
And similarly, I guess just say,
Yes,
yeah,
I know.
important.
And I think oxygen is first.
Okay, fine.
As I'm listening to their answers, and I'm like, let me see what the number one is.
Yeah, I'm saying like, how did you get there? What would you do in that amount of time?
It's just the top sheet.
I made some with and without, so they have the ones without.
Got it.
Okay, so let's say it's probably like maybe 10 days trip. 20 miles away. Yes, that's what we're thinking. We should go from the top and then yes or no.
So it's 200 miles.
After my I'm like, yeah.
On the moon? On the moon.
But 50
I'm not the same.
Definitely it's not.
My maternal self is not as good at 6 o'clock at night as I used to be.
Well, what about meals?
Maybe just for sleeping, but I mean, that would not be on that. That's heavy to bring probably to hitting your neck.
Why would you know? Caliber cases.
Oh, why not? I'm going to move back. So
So
why
I
do you have
think the flares are pretty important.
I'd rather have,
The
I'd
HP
rather,
should also.
no, I'd rather
Because we're on
have
a
radio.
Yeah, we're on the moon, right?
It's 200 miles, yeah.
Rendezvous with a mothership,
Right?
on the
Well,
latest
it's on the
surface
moon,
of
though.
yeah, then we don't want okay. So then then we probably need some kind of heating unit.
So let's just
But-
say yes. Because we don't know where we're landing, right?
I don't think it needs off.
It might be really.
No, but I mean, would you rather?
Because I like, it's like it.
Would you rather have like radio? Like,
Yeah, but it doesn't, can it have such a huge radio?
That's why the pistol is down. Like, why is this one there?
I don't know. Yeah,
So
those are like
technically, I think that's
200 yeah.
5 minutes.
but I don't know if
Can it travel way though?
yeah, so let's just cut it out.
Yeah.
it can definitely reach 200 miles.
And what about the edge?
Yeah, I would rather say
You might need it like
But
that,
it's
right?
heavy.
Like, to be crushed.
Yeah, I mean, we could eat it, but that wouldn't be, that would be.
I think 15 should be box of
But
mine.
I think we cut up the middle.
Because we don't have books.
I mean, you don't really need it all.
Life raft, I put that pretty low too.
Well,
Yeah,
what I'm
it's
thinking
really
of is nutrition in general. I mean, I
Yeah,
know
okay,
there's
all
one
those
concept,
like,
I'm just wondering
okay, let's
if more is better.
Alright,
We can
alright.
do F.
Okay,
That's
self-contained
only-
life raft.
But I don't think it's as important as,
Alright, what is it?
Self-contained life raft.
and it's like 20
If you have a
miles.
big crater and you need to
No.
Okay, so it's less
Better
than
amount.
that.
It's just heavy though.
Oh.
15.
But you can't go without.
Okay, so
The risk
I put the
of
so
milk.
let's say the third one.
Have you done this before?
The fourth one should be a thermal. Let's put that the radio. Maybe.
I was thinking maybe like this.
In variations of it.
What?
I've done it where it's like people, and that gets really.
That's
sticky.
messy.
It's like a single mother of 3, and yeah, it gets sticky.
Ooh.
It's like your cruise ship.
Mm.
It's sinking in their lifeboats. You
No,
save, and
stop.
then it's like a bishop. Yeah, it's bad. A doctor, yeah. A single mother of 3.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
yeah.
Wow.
That
And then you see people's true colors really come out.
I
And I
bet.
was thinking about doing that for this, and I was like, that's a little much.
This is 101.
okay.
Oh, well, hold on. At the same time, what?
They're actually getting along really well.
Put it like all of them are. All of them.
That's what they wet.
Oh, you need the matches to it.
There's gonna be 12. And then, that could be 11. Or sure, this one could be 11.
Yeah, because it works on combustion.
Nylon rope.
That's useful.
2 minutes.
It can be a.
2 minutes left?
Yeah, 2 minutes left.
Alright. The heating unit.
Why don't we connect them?
Okay, let's
So
do
whatever
that.
order we have them in,
Milk can be 10.
we'll do this
Okay,
first and then,
yeah,
okay.
it could be.
First
Stellar
thing-
map.
Yes.
We
That
might.
might, navigation, that's good.
I like
That's
this
after,
too.
I think.
Yeah.
That should be up. So I'll put this as 4, the radio, and 5 is stellar map.
So what, they can have 3.
Then the sign up first.
They can have 3 minutes.
They can have 3 minutes. No, they can't.
Okay.
Wait, why you want to give them 3 minutes? We still got
I know, we got stuff to do.
Okay, then I'll put 6 and keep 7. Because, yes, because you might, I guess,
You have a chance of not being the first day, but you definitely are good.
Oxygen
And then
yeah, that's right.
Also, yes,
Well, yes, 7 million.
And they came from the same group.
I'd rather have broken.
No, but like those, you have to
stellar
let
map and
as well. Like milk is
Broke is good. Broke is good.
broke, let's use like,
But if you
so
have
that we
this
cut
many
it in any case, like, because we can easily.
Like a crater.
Actually, instead of
Oh.
8.
8, 9 and 10.
Switch
9.
this as 2 and then the other one going down.
Yeah.
So
So let's see, 1.
the stellar map is 2 and then the other is 1.
1, 2.
I'm not sure.
30 seconds.
Okay. Next is we have first aid, portable heating. Which one is this?
Excellence before education. That's crazy. Like, wow, that is a
Welcome to
whole
MIT.
workshop right there.
Yeah. So,
In time.
I want to put these.
Thank you kindly. All right, let's reconvene. Let's reconvene.
Pens down.
Those answers don't count anymore. And it's not really a test. Okay, so NASA actually provided us with the answers. So we're going to find out if you all got them right. So for number 1, they had the 2 100-pound tanks of oxygen. If you had that, raise your hand. Awesome. For number 2, they had the 20 liters of water. If you had it, raise your hand. Great. 3 was the stellar map. Nobody had it? Okay. 4 was the food concentrate. Okay. 5 was the solar-powered FM receiver transmitter. 6 was 50 feet of nylon rope. 7 was the first aid kit. 8 was the parachute silk. 9 was the self-inflating life raft. 10 was the signal flares. 11 was the 2 .45 caliber pistols. 12 was the case of dehydrated milk. 13 was the portable heating unit. 14 was the magnetic compass. And 15 was the box of matches.
Give them these.
Yeah, they can look at it.
we're like close enough.
You're close. So this is their reasoning as well. You can check out the reasoning. And on the back is how you can score it. I don't know if that's important or not.
Yes.
And that's just for your personal information. But what I want to debrief this activity. Hey there.
So if we could have your attention up here.
And we actually struggled with if we were going to give you the answers because we knew this is what was going to happen. How do you all go about making decisions for how you're going to rank? Everybody speak at one time.
Well, we basically went through each and kind of tried to filter out which ones we didn't think were very important, and then based on that, we started like organizing which ones are more important and using our knowledge. But I guess our knowledge was perfect.
Okay. Did everybody participate?
Yeah.
Okay. What about this group?
Well, yeah, in this case, we kind of started with the most essential ones, like water and food, that's how we rank. So even if we won't start navigating, at least we can survive like for some time, and then we started ranking the maps and radio and to try to navigate ourselves like people through this.
Okay. Did anyone influence what decisions were made? And we were listening and paying attention, just so you know. did anyone make suggestions or no, we should do this?
I feel our group was very, like, everyone gave their opinion and then we just had to make a decision with that based on the average.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same thing for this group? All right, wonderful. Was there any conflict? Not really? That's fine. I want to ask, because you actually did very well with this, we were paying attention. Why do you think I asked you to do an activity like this? And how does this resonate with being a part of a group, like a student organization or a club?
Say if someone just takes the whole power and just says, I want this, I want
Does it happen?
that. Not in our case, I think.
Well, I'm not talking about specifically with your group. I'm talking about does it happen with student groups and organizations? So why do you think it didn't happen here?
Well, I don't know him, so I don't want to be a bitch in front of him.
I appreciate your
Be
honesty.
Nargis, I'd be like, Nargis, there's no oxygen. We don't need that.
Okay. So you weren't comfortable enough with him to argue.
What's different between arguing and taking power, I feel.
Okay.
Like you could definitely argue and then have to together come to a solution, which could be very healthy because then you can get a better discussion. And then, but the problem is people would just say, I want this, I'm not going to discuss it because I know this is right.
Okay.
But also the setting, right? I mean, we're in a session about being an inclusive leader, so we have it in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully.
Thank you for being honest. And I was actually going to get to that point too. Thank you. What about this group?
Well, I think in the same case here, we kind of like talked, like I could say my opinion, but I would obviously justify it, and if like I see an argument that I actually believe that it's a counter argument to mine, I'll reconsider it.
Now, does this happen in the clubs and organizations that you're a part of?
Well, sure, sometimes, yeah, like more people, some people have take the initiative to, take, like, force their own thing.
So they force their opinions on the rest of the group.
And mostly it's not because they like doing that, but sometimes probably because the others don't really care or like don't take the initiative. So they say, I'll just do that. And I know better than that. So
Yeah, absolutely right.
We're all like sitting here and like we're sitting here to do this right now, and so we're all like engaged in the discussion. But I think it's a lot harder to get people together, especially like students.
Okay, thank you for your honesty.
Do you mean like even bring people to the table, or what did you mean by that?
I mean, both.
Just close the door.
To engage with the issue and think about it beforehand, and actually like have some sort of discussion about it.
not every member in a group is equally interested.
That's a very good point. All right, thank you for doing the activity.
Yeah, great. We're going to talk about the definition of an inclusive leader. So, and this is part of the PowerPoint, but I think we might have lost that. So let's start with the push the button.
It's going to be difficult to see anyway.
Yeah. We can actually, you can jot this down if you want to remember it. We can write it up on the board. So when I say the word inclusion, what comes to your mind?
Being nice and thinking about everyone,
Okay.
not being selfish.
Okay. So thinking about others. That's great.
First thing that I was judgmental.
What was that?
Judgmental.
Being judgmental?
Yeah, and how that affects the other person. Like preconceived notions or anything like that. Makes you not wanting to talk to people.
Okay, so is inclusion being judgmental or kind of the opposite of that, or what do you think?
If you're judgmental, you're typically not very inclusive.
Okay, so like a lack of judgment, the openness that we were talking about maybe. Great. We just got started. This is about being an inclusive leader.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Do you want to just share your name and why you're here?
Okay, my name is Wen, and I'm thinking about trying to be a student organization later this semester.
Great.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
So we're talking about the definition of inclusion. We just did a small group activity. Any other thoughts about inclusion before I read the definition?
Well, in my view, it's, it seems like in the thoughts that are said already kind of imply that inclusion is just the opposite of exclusion, of being an exclusive leader that does stuff on your own. So there's something more to it, which is that you also get people who, not just not pushing people away, but also trying to get people to on the table.
Exactly what we were talking about just now about how you get people to the table. Great. The actual definition is a practice of ensuring that people in organizations feel that they belong. So this is kind of our ultimate quest, right? A sense of belonging. I think I've heard a lot of MIT students say that when they first thought about or stepped foot on campus that they found their people, right? Like it was an instant sense of, oh yeah, this is right for me. This is where I belong. And so the act of being inclusive means ensuring that people in a group or organization feel that sense of belonging. And then a leadership or leader, what comes to mind when you think about that? There are no wrong answers. Anything that comes to mind? Leadership?
Well, probably, leader is not definitely a positive. It's meant to be positive, but we said we can be both inclusive and exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the one who's in charge and has some, let's say, power and can supposed to enforce or make other people volunteers based on what kind of leader he is.
Okay, so there's a concept of power, taking charge. What are other people's thoughts?
Maybe the one taking the decision at the end,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully based on the group's idea.
Okay, so there's some decision making involved, maybe. Organizing. It's a key concept, I think, in leadership.
Do you need to be some kind of model, in your group, to be a leader?
So setting an example. Great. Still haven't quite hit this one on the head yet. What's that?
To make people motivated to their work.
To motivate others. Mm-hmm.
I'm loving these definitions.
I know, they're all really good. Building consensus. Great. That kind of goes along with the idea of inclusion, right? So the actual definition is a person who guides or directs a group. So guidance and direction in that way also implies a little bit of inclusion because it takes away the dynamic of having to be the decider or the person in control or the person with all of the power, but it puts the power back in the hands of the group, but somebody who is able to offer guidance and direction. So it's a little softer. And when you put that together with the idea of inclusion, it's offering that guidance with the idea that you're wanting everyone to feel like they have a sense of belonging in the group. Does that make sense?
Well, would that make people feel like you're high above them to guide them, you're not one of them, like that?
Well, that's what I think we're going to grapple with in the next discussion that we're going to have. But that's the question that we have is how do we do that? How do we get there? How do you offer guidance and give people a sense of belonging and a sense of empowerment?
But do you necessarily have to do that? I mean, great leaders, people might like great leaders who don't really feel that they're among them. Probably they respect the fact that he's objectively above.
So I think there are leaders that are not inclusive. Like we talked about exclusive leadership, right?
Yeah.
I think the goal for tonight is to talk about inclusive leadership.
Can't you be inclusive and still have that? Maybe some people will be fine with the fact that you don't really feel that he's one.
And I understand what you're saying. saying. You're saying that there may be a group that says, as the leader, you have the power, you make the decisions for us, and we're fine with that. If that's the group consensus, that's absolutely fine. But if the group doesn't feel that way, then that's not an inclusive leader.
Right.
But in the other case, is he inclusive, or if like the group is fine with that, or like?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's about reading the
group.
group.
Says to you that we are happy with you having the power and you making the decisions for us, and the leader does that, I think that that's an inclusive leader because you're listening to what your group wants.
And I think we've all been in that position, right? You'd be like, oh, you please, just you decide. Like, what color banner are we going to have? Just do it up, you know? Great. That's the definitions that we were going to go over.
And so we want you all to keep that definition in mind as we move through the night.
So, yeah, sounds good.
So, what are inclusive leadership skills? This is a list that we came up with, and we apologize that the PowerPoint is not working. So the first thing that we came up with is an inclusive leader values the opinion of others. And why do you think that that's important? Absolutely. So the group feels like they belong. Anything else? Valuing the opinion of others.
Incorporating diversity of opinions leads to a better outcome.
Diversity of opinion leads to a better outcome. Excellent. An inclusive leader listens. Why is that important?
It's the start of being inclusive, right? If you don't listen to them, be inclusive. It's one of the basic introductory processes you have to start doing in order to become an inclusive leader.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So, I'm sorry, you left off on...
Listening.
And an inclusive leader ensures that everyone has an equal voice. Why might that be important? Or what happens when that's not the case? Somebody feels excluded. Yeah, definitely. Okay. What's the next one?
An inclusive leader understands the values of the group and the mission and goals of the group. Why is that important?
I think that's not necessarily a value for inclusive leaders. The value that generally a leader should have. Like a leader should know the purpose and where his or her group is going. So being inclusive adds like even more to that. So the way he should act towards the other members and the guidance he should give them. Because we said inclusive leader means more guidance to this group. So he should know where to guide.
Have any of you encountered being in a group where the president or the vice president didn't really understand what the purpose of the group was and wasn't aware of the mission and the goals? And so things were just kind of chaotic. Yes, give me some feedback. This is interactive. Thank you for nodding yes. Anybody else ever been a part of a group like that?
Yeah, I've been in a group, nobody knows what's
Thank you for being honest.
Yeah.
And what does that feel like when you're in that situation?
You just don't know what to do.
You don't know what to do and what else? How do you feel?
Well,
I can do your job. What else? Let's keep it real. Okay. I can do your job. What else?
it's just like if you all work in 15 minutes, like meaningless kind of, yeah.
Meaningless, frustration. Why am I even being bothered with this? I could be spending my time doing something else. Y'all need to get it together. Okay.
So an inclusive leader accepts diversity of thought, which we've talked about already a little bit, and provides the group with safe challenges. What do you think that means?
I believe keeping the group active with challenges will at the same time keep everyone interested in that and right on the track for that. So it's gonna make everything more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Giving challenges.
So people are involved and invested, excited.
And safe means that the cost of failure is not high.
Right. So it's not bungee jumping where, for me, would be uncomfortable, but it's something that the group can handle.
So if you have never been in charge of programming, I'm not going to put you in charge of the spring formal because it's probably going to be a disaster. You want me to do next one?
Yeah, thanks.
An inclusive leader recognizes potential. Why is that important as the leader of the group?
It allows you to loop in each member has their skills and willing to contribute. Like, I mean, if you're contributing to the group, you can be more invested in it. And so being able to recognize what people can do for a group is getting them part of it.
So investment in the group. What else? Very good answer. People might, oh, I love that. People might not recognize their own potential. What else?
It's a little bit connected to your challenge, too, and just that if you know their potential, you can give them a challenge.
Mm-hmm. If you know their potential, you can give them a challenge. Think far out.
Delegate. You gotta get someone else to replace you, and you don't want to do all the work too.
Thank you, ma'am. I like the way she said it, too.
Definitely.
Delegating and thinking ahead of, I might not be here next year because I might want to take on a new leadership role or I may be graduating. So who's next in line to take over?
Great. And this one kind of goes with the last one about recognizing potential, but it's about utilizing the gifts of other people, utilizing the gifts of your group members. And so you see their potential and you make use of that, basically.
An inclusive leader steps up and steps back. And we talked a little bit about that when we were talking about ropes. Why is that important? If you're the president, to sometimes step up, but then other times step back.
So stepping up is important because if you're any sort of leader that's in charge of guidance, at some point someone needs to take charge of making a big decision, or even when a group kind of agrees and is talking about something, you know, a person who is in some sort of formal role needs to be the one to say, okay, this is going to happen now that we talked about it. And stepping back after stepping up is important because if you're always the one just making that decision, then others don't feel they have the opportunity or they don't feel they're needed to even say anything.
Mm-hmm. And has anyone ever been in an organization where the president was making all of the decisions and there really was no group consensus? And so you showed up and it was, we're going to have our spring formal on the 25th, and we're going to have our so-and-so on the 7th. And you're like, wait, we didn't sit down as a group and decide that this is what we're going to do. But then they're delegating work to you, and you haven't even been invested in the process of ensuring that these things are going to happen. Has anyone ever been in groups like that? Because I have. Thank you, camera woman.
I think, and did you want to add to the idea of step up, step back?
Well, I was going to say a little bit other that, like, in my opinion, a step up, step back could also be, I feel a leader, if you come to a position where there is a hard choice that has to be taken and it is risk connected, a leader has to kind of take the responsibility, and if something goes bad, that person gets the blame, right? But at the same time also, if something turns out really nice, this leader don't want to stand in front alone and say, I did everything alone. So step back and then position and actually allow the whole group to, you know, be happy for the results.
I love that.
Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a dance, knowing when to step up and step back. And I would add to this that you have to kind of know your own personality, too. That if you're an extrovert and you're always stepping up, that you consider, okay, maybe I need to hear more about other people's opinions in this situation. And if you're an introvert, for example, and you are leading from behind and gaining consensus and offering guidance and direction, but really letting the group take the lead, that you take a step outside your comfort zone and offer your opinion when the group needs some more support. So listening to your own, personality traits as well.
Thank you. An inclusive leader has to be receptive to feedback. Why is that important?
Only way you can become better, right?
Only way you can become better.
you know, your way of being inclusive might not work, and if you're not able to listen to what people like and don't like and that, then you might not be inclusive for that particular group.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Okay. So an inclusive leader needs to be a self-learner to be able to broaden his or her scope of knowledge. What does that mean, do you think? When we're talking about people in particular and helping them feel like they have a sense of belonging in the group.
Well, I mean, if you have a formal leadership position especially, then you have no one who, you know, to ask in terms of, you know, formally to take permission from or anything. So at some point things are going to go on in the group that you are not experienced or not qualified in, and you know, part of it, you know, if you're unable to learn from experiences, whether it's internal, something that goes on in the group or something from the outside, then it would be really hard to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Own your idea. It was good. Anyone else? Why is it important for you to broaden your scope as a leader?
So you can see people's potential more than, I mean, you don't really know that you are able to see all the potential right away. So you need to have a lot of knowledge and expand so that you can see in your area.
Okay, good.
Thinking outside of your formal leadership positions at MIT, have you ever met anyone on campus that's different from yourself in any way? And have you ever heard people ask questions about those differences that were maybe not as thoughtful as they could have been? Yeah. So I think part of this is taking that educational component on for yourself and learning a little bit about somebody's background or culture or piece of their identity that you're not familiar with, so that you're not asking those kind of inappropriate questions.
But also serving as a role model for the rest of the group.
Absolutely. So yeah.
And so we want to expound a little bit on this broadening your scope component. And to expound on it, we're going to talk about attending workshops, trainings, and programs. Why is that important? You're actually doing it now.
Yeah.
Okay. Attending workshops, trainings, and programs. Keeping in mind that you're trying to be inclusive.
I mean, even in cases where you think that you're an inclusive leader, you might just realize in such a program that you're not that.
Yeah, we all have work to do, right? Yeah.
Definitely. I actually have been in the field for 12 years, and I'm getting ready to go away for a week to a conference to broaden my scope because there's so much that I still need to learn, and I have a degree in this field. So it's always important to continually renew your knowledge base. Have a diverse group of friends. Why is that important? As an inclusive leader. Not just a leader.
You get used to things not being the status quo.
Okay.
You're surrounded by diversity. It's no longer diverse in your mind.
So it's normal, it's commonplace. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? What would be the benefit of having diverse friends?
I believe it's kind of like a kind of education, because the more diverse your surroundings are, the more stuff you learn about different cultures and different people and how they think, and that makes you more educated and know how to deal with different kinds of people, not just your friends and people from your own group.
Yeah, it goes back to that learning piece. And the next one is about stepping outside of your comfort zone, which we've talked a little bit about, taking the risks that you're asking of the group, you're able to take for yourself a little bit. and knowing your limits, too. This is a big one, I think, at MIT. I think a lot of folks take on a lot outside of your course load in terms of leadership, being a part of different groups, stepping up, and maybe taking on a little too much. So knowing your limits is a good leadership skill, because then you're fully present for the stuff that you are taking on and the obligations that you have already. So has anyone in their MIT career ever said, okay, that's something I thought I could do, but I'm going to put it on hold? Maybe I'll do it at one point, some other time. Just one person? Okay, so that's a good leadership skill. Great. You're prioritizing. You can, still keep that passion of yours down the line if it's of interest, but you're recognizing that you have priorities in your life, and that's important. And self-care. Has anyone ever lost a night of sleep? Or maybe not eaten the way they should have, or anything like that? All those things, all those self-care practices are also really good leadership skills, because then again, you're your best self when you come to the table in any leadership role that you have. That's the list that we came up with, but we're also curious about your thoughts. So we were going to get into small groups again, and I wonder if we can do, what do you think, 2s and 3? Two.
We can do 3 and 4.
Buddies, 3 and 4? Okay. Great. Maybe we can separate here this time, and 3 over here. You can turn around. And you're going to just discuss in your small groups any other attributes of inclusive leadership that we didn't cover, or things that you thought differently about in the list that we did cover. And we can probably offer that list to you while you're talking as well, since we don't have the PowerPoint. So I'm going to bring us back. Hopefully this is the start of a conversation that you're going to continue and keep thinking about in terms of your own leadership skills. So with that in mind, I just want to have you think individually now, so come back to your individual spots, about the skills that you talked about that you think you currently have, and the ones that you think you need to work on. So
but even before we get to that, I want to hear at least 2 things that this group came up with.
Okay, sorry.
That wasn't on the list. Okay, 1.
I'm stepping back.
Well, one thing that we talked about is that the leader has a responsibility that if people aren't engaged, to figure out the reason why. So if they're not interested, you might sort of write it off as something that's okay, I've done as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
A leader is supposed to find out the reasons why they're not interested and engaged, and maybe address them so that they feel empowered, and to provide the tone for the group so that they feel like they're sort of in an environment where they can express.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Like we said, that even a leader might think she is inclusive because he's just listening only to the group of people, or the part of people who are really interested into that, and there might be like a huge amount of other people in the group that don't really care. And to me, that's not an inclusive leader. It's probably this leader's fault, or he has a responsibility to make everyone interested. So, and that happens, like, I think in many groups, like, especially in bigger ones, like they're partialized.
Mm-hmm.
And they're into smaller teams, based on the interest or like the cultures and stuff like that. So the inclusive leader shouldn't respond or correspond only to some parts of that.
Thank you. Very good point.
Yeah.
1 from this group? Did you come up with at least 1?
Yeah.
Give it to me.
Well, one of the ideas that we came up with is I guess taking the time to interact with people one-on-one and see what they have to say and show that you care about them.
Absolutely.
And why.
Thank you.
That would be a good tool if you were trying to engage everyone, too. They kind of work together. Great. So take just a few minutes. We're going to wrap up But we'd really love your thoughts on where you are personally with this so that you can take something out of tonight and something you can feel good about and something that you want to work on. Taking a step outside your comfort zone.
Sharon is, don't act like that.
I think one more important, which I think many people, leaders mostly could improve, including me, is trying to set aside personal affairs, or which happens to everyone. I mean, and we're human. We all have personal affairs. Some people have more preferences, others we don't really like that much. So when you're a leader, the inclusive leader especially has to set aside all of those affairs. He has to act, be himself, but only the good part of himself.
Or maybe just not taking things too personally. Yeah.
Never take, like, probably will compete with others from that leadership position. But it's leadership position. You shouldn't take that into you, like, as a personal insult or something like that, which I believe it's really hard not to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. It's a big challenge.
It's a big challenge,
But it comes back to this idea of helping other people feel a sense of belonging and the inclusion. Yeah. If you take your personal affairs out of that mix, you're already getting to a place where everyone feels like, all right, I can be at the table. Anyone else? Something they want to work on? Or something you already do that we've talked about?
I think I definitely have to, like, I'm kind of the type that has a lot to do. As you guys said, I kind of forget that I have to take care of myself. And I guess if you're a really busy leader, then you kind of have to make a schedule where you actually care about being healthy.
Mm-hmm.
That's how
Great. Well, that is an awesome way to end tonight because we're going to respect your time and let you go take care of yourself and be well, and hopefully you got some skills that you'll take with you. Thank you.
Thank you.